So this is one of the first books that genuinely changed the way I see the world. And despite the edgy name, it's actually focused a lot on Buddhist and existential ideals. Mostly talks about how we can take a step back from all the noise going on in the world and really just focus on what matters most to us. Manson says that life is about not knowing and then doing something anyway. Don't ever forget that. And don't ever be afraid of that. The more you try to be certain about something, the more uncertain and insecure you're gonna feel. And in reverse, the more comfortable you get with not knowing, the more comfortable you get with uncertainty. So if you feel stuck, instead of waiting for the right answers, just start. It's only through action that you'll eventually find what you're looking for. Find your favorite flavor of shit sandwich. It can be really easy to fall into this trap of pursuing the perfect career or lifestyle or relationship. But one of the most valuable lessons I've had to learn is that life is a lot harder when you have to deal with the things that you don't like rather than the things that you do. So the question isn't so much, what are you passionate about? It's, what are you passionate about enough that you are willing to struggle through the hard parts? In other words, everything sucks, at least part of the time, so you're gonna be defined by the problems that you choose. Next is to get comfortable with failure. The fear of failure leads to inaction, which in turn causes more anxiety and fear and creates a loop. In order to get out of this cycle, we have to accept failure as a positive experience. This is one of Cal Newport's most famous books. He's a really popular productivity author, but this is by far probably the most impactful one I've read. And it's all about how finding the skill and ability to sit down and really concentrate on a single task at a time is probably one of the rarest and most impactful skills you can develop in today's world. And this was actually published over a decade ago before TikTok brain even existed. I think this man can predict the future. So lesson number 4 is to embrace lead over lag. If you're familiar with goal settings, lead measures are your inputs, so the actions you directly take day to day, and your lag measures are the outcomes, and they're usually numbers or things we can't control. Typically when people set goals, we tend to focus a lot on these lag measures, right? We're thinking we want to make a certain amount of money, we want to gain certain awards or accolades, but because a lot of that stuff is out of your control, it can actually make you feel like you've failed when you've actually been putting in the work all along. So for example, one of my biggest goals for the longest time is to get a silver play button, which means 100K subscribers. That's largely something that is in YouTube's control and not mine. Whereas if you focus on something like how many videos you're producing, that's a much more fulfilling way to measure success. Which, by the way, you should subscribe if you haven't already. Lesson number 5 is dividing your day by high gear and low gear. There's a concept called deep work, which essentially just means giving yourself a couple hours at a time or time blocks to focus on a single highly cognitive task. And yes, that means no multitasking. And the way I tend to incorporate this into my day is to have a few hours in the morning that I block out and make sure there's no distractions. I work on my hardest tasks then, and then I slowly introduce more shallow tasks, things like emails, answering texts, like admin stuff throughout the day. It eventually goes towards, relaxing and socializing. And this is how it's possible to get a lot of work done and still stay present in your own life. And the 6th lesson is to incorporate active rest. So if you work out, you probably know that there's something called rest days, but typically when you take a rest day, you don't just sit on the couch eating Cheetos, although maybe you do, but you technically don't actually have to take days off, right? You can do yoga, run, bike, something that's low impact, and in a similar vein, your brain technically doesn't need rest in the way that you think it does. It just needs to switch contexts. So when you've had a really long day of work, instead of reaching for your phone and doom scrolling or binge watching Netflix, you can choose to draw or play sport or hang out with friends, and all of that counts as rest and will leave you refreshed for the next day while still maintaining a sense of flow over time. One of my favorite ways to make sure I'm prioritizing time for deep work is to time block, and one of the best apps to do that with is Akiflow. So when it comes to staying productive and focused, especially after reading books like Cal Newport's, I rely heavily on apps like this. This app is a game changer for anyone looking to manage their time effectively and ensure they're dedicating enough hours to their most important tasks. With Akiflow, I can seamlessly integrate my Google Calendar and other task management tools, bringing everything to one place. This means I can plan my day with precision, blocking out specific times for deep work, meetings, and even breaks. The The visual layout helps me see my entire schedule at a glance, making it easier to prioritize my tasks and avoid overcommitting. One feature I love is the daily review prompt, which helps me start my day with a clear plan and adjust as needed. Whether I'm prepping for a client interview or editing my latest video, OcuFlow helps me track and ensure that I'm using my time wisely. The reminders and smart notifications are particularly useful for keeping me focused without being intrusive. For those days when I'm juggling multiple projects, OcuFlow's task consolidation feature is invaluable. It pulls tasks from all my different platforms, helping me stay organized and ensuring nothing slips through the cracks. This is especially helpful when I'm balancing content creation with administrative tasks and personal commitments. Moreover, OcuFlow's ability to sync across devices ensures that I have access to my schedule and tasks no matter where I am. Whether I'm at home, in the gym, or just generally on the go, I can quickly check my to-dos and make adjustments on the fly. This flexibility is crucial for maintaining productivity in a fast-paced environment. Another standout feature is the focus mode, which minimizes distractions by allowing me to concentrate on one task at a time. This aligns perfectly with the principles of deep work, enabling me to produce high-quality work without the constant interruptions that can derail my focus. If you're looking to enhance your productivity and manage your time like a pro, I highly recommend giving OcuFlow a try. You can use the link in my description for a 7-day free trial, no strings attached. Experience the difference for yourself and see how OcuFlow can help you achieve your goals. Thank you, OcuFlow, for sponsoring this portion of the video. So to this day, this is still one of actually maybe the most important book I've ever read. It goes over the concept of attachment styles: secure, avoidant, anxious. This triggered a lot of tears for me, led to 6 months of therapy, and it was a huge emotional journey, but totally worth it. So I am a textbook avoidant, which basically just means that I push people away in order to protect myself from my fear of abandonment. And for the longest time, I thought that I was successful in love and relationships because I had a lot of long-term monogamous relationships that were all relatively stable, at least on the outside, and I was always the one to end them. But there are a lot of ways that this book taught me that I have been wrong about love. And the first lesson is that self-reliance is not the same as independence. I think the biggest lesson I learned from this was just how much I underestimated the importance of intimacy with other people. I saw relying on other people as a form of weakness and self-reliance as some ultimate virtue. And so anytime I was dating someone, I would always keep them at arm's length. And if they wanted to spend too much time together or if they needed too much attention, I would start putting them down for it. There's actually this concept called the dependency paradox, where the more dependent you become on someone, the more independent you get, because you develop a secure base, which is just the knowledge that you're supported by someone and fully backed up by someone in times of uncertainty. And being able to rely on someone 100% gives you the courage you need to take risks and live your life to the fullest. And lesson number 8 is that high expectations from a partner can actually be a defense mechanism. Embracing the notion of the perfect partner is one of the most powerful tools an avoidant can use to keep someone else at bay. It's really embarrassing to admit this, but in all of my past relationships, I would nitpick and put down my partner and always think about how they weren't living up to my expectations, but I never questioned if I was the problem. Lesson number 9 is to communicate if you need space. I used to let the sensation of being smothered build up to the point where I thought that my only choice was to break up with this person and be single again. Part of healing an avoidant detachment style is recognizing when you get that feeling to leave. And instead of running, being able to proactively communicate with your partner that you just need some time to yourself. This book is the antidote to hustle culture, toxic productivity, grind, baby, grind. If you know me, I am such a nerd when it comes to systems design, organization, efficiency. Throughout most of, honestly, my late teens and 20s, I was constantly on this search for a perfect system that would finally make my life as perfect and beautifully efficient as possible before I could start actually living. So lesson number 10 is that in the long run, we're all dead. Which sounds obvious, I know, but you'd be surprised at how many people fall into this concept called the efficiency trap, which is essentially where we try harder and harder to make our lives as productive as possible because we think that one day we're going to be able to fit in everything we want to do. The sobering reality is that no matter how efficient you are with your time, the human mind is able to think of so many more things that you want to accomplish and experience than you will ever be capable of doing. This means you have to be aware of medium priorities, which are things that interest you but aren't the most important. It's hard to willingly choose to miss out on things, but if you don't, then life is going to do it for you. And what we choose to miss out on is how we make meaning out of our own lives. Lesson number 11 is that you will always be failing, so you might as well choose in advance what you're going to fail at. You're never going to have your health, career, family, friends, hobbies, everything perfectly in line and in balance. So at least be intentional about what you're going to fail at any given time. Don't feel guilty when you have to miss out on the gym for a week because you're launching a big project, or if you have to leave for work early because you don't want to miss your daughter's recital. These are choices we have to make at the end of the day. Lesson number 12 is to develop a fixed volume approach when it comes to productivity. Since, as we established, you can't do it all, it's best to limit the things that you're working on at any given time instead of trying to fill up all the extra time you do get back with more projects and more stuff to do. This goes hand in hand with deep work, so pick a few things that are important to you right now, focus on them, finish them, and then move on to the next thing. This book is all about self-sabotage, which I used to think I knew what that word meant. It's even more nuanced and insidious than you might think. So lesson number 13 is that self-sabotage is actually a form of self-protection. That's actually what makes it so much harder to actually identify. So I have always valued freedom above all else, and throughout all of my 20s, I was traveling, moving locations, changing jobs, changing relationships, especially whenever I felt like my freedom was potentially threatened. But after reading this, I realized the thing that I was actually searching for was a sense of safety and belonging. But because commitment meant opening yourself up to potential abandonment, I avoided it like the plague. Change is always hard, even when it's positive. Change can trigger a lot of fear and anxiety, and so we tend to resist it. But it's important to recognize that the discomfort that comes with change is not necessarily a signal that we're doing something wrong. I'm naturally a very intuitive person, and I follow my gut a lot. So it wasn't until I realized this that I previously often saw this resistance as a reason why I shouldn't pursue something. So now I try to embrace uncertainty as a normal part of the transition process, for better or for worse, which brings us to our final lesson. Learn to distinguish your fears from your intuition. A lot of the times we mix those up because our fears tend to be louder than our intuition. And the only way to really listen to our intuition is to focus more on how you feel in the present moment versus how you feel when thinking about the future. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I had never read these books, so I definitely recommend you give them a read if any of them sounded interesting, and if any of these topics you'd like me to explore further in future videos, just let me know in the comments. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.